Hey, what's up guys? Poppy here, back with another Umusume video, and we are going to be talking about today the new upcoming horse and support banner. Now, you might remember in my last video that I didn't really feel confident talking about the upcoming ones because I didn't really know a whole lot about them. I didn't really want to say anything on it. But after sitting down and getting a little bit of a look, we're going to be analyzing it kind of live here, but I did sort of go over it a bit just so I could get a better general understanding. And so we're going to get into that today. So we're going to be talking about Eishin Flash, as well as Tosin Jordan SR and the Nice Nature SSR card. And there's a lot to be said about these horses and the support cards. So let's get right into it. We're going to be looking at Eishin Flash here. Eishin Flash base stats are, nothing too crazy, but overall pretty good. Where we get into a little bit suspect are the stat bonuses and these aptitudes. So let's talk about this right here. We have a 10% in power, not that bad generally, and a 20% in wit. Now, wit is not a stat that necessarily needs to be maxed out. In fact, at around 400 to 500 is when you're going to be getting the most bang for your buck for it. So having a 20% wit increase isn't necessarily that helpful, especially because of the positions and the races that she does, which if we look down here, we can see that the best things that she's set up in, actually much like Misho Doto from the last banner, is mediums and longs, with pace being a B, late being an A, and end being a C. So those are the ones that are going to be the easiest ones to train for, but she's obviously very good and positioned to be a late surger in medium and long races. However, the stat bonuses do not reflect this. Why is that the case? Well, you see, the longer, and this is something kind of just generally to take into account, especially when either preparing for CMs or making a horse for team trials or just generally running a horse in career mode, at least in URA, is that the longer the track distance is, the less overall power you need to make the horse accelerate to its top speed. And why is that? And that's because from where the acceleration zone starts, being the last leg of the race, not the final spurt, which is that little segment that comes just before you reach the finish line, it is the late race. Right when you hit late race is when you get into the acceleration zone, when your horse is going to try to start going as fast as they possibly can. And power does play a little bit of a role in that. However, in a longer distance track or even medium, stamina is what matters more, because if you reach top speed but you don't have the stamina to make it to the end of the track, then your power is useless. And that's sort of the issue here. She doesn't have anything that boosts stamina or speed or even guts, which does play a little bit of a role in that. It's power and wit, which is much better set up for a mile distance track, which she has an F in. So just from looking at this alone, not even getting to her skills yet, but just looking at this alone, you can see a little bit that her stats kind of build her for a track distance she's not good at. And the stats that she, the stat bonuses here do not lend themselves to being all that helpful in the tracks that she is supposed to be good in. That's just an automatic concern right there, that she seems a tad mismatched, and we might see even a little bit more of that in her skills here. I'm gonna butcher this, but I did take a year of German. I believe this is pronounced Schwarzerschwitz. That is probably wrong. I apologize. I think it translates to Black Sword. I might be wrong on that, but it is a very cool sounding name. What the skill does, so looking at it, just increase the velocity in a dash for the lead after running calmly and according to plan. We saw that, right? Calmly. What does that mean? I don't even need to hit the details to know this, but King Halo has a very similar mechanic in hers, where basically the horse can't be rushed. And if we looked here, you're probably looking at this because when I first looked at this, I was like, what the heck am I looking at? This is an insane trigger order, and what does any of this mean? Well, thankfully there is a skill conditions filter here that kind of helps. So what we're looking at here is this temptation count. And the temptation count means that you haven't been rushed a single time in the race. That matters. As well as her having other conditions. So basically, you can't be in a bad position. Right here, you can see this rate order in 80 continue. Your position in the race was never worse than the top 80% after the first 5 seconds. And then here is that your position in the race was always outside of the top 40 within the last 60, for example. Within the 9 Umas race, you were always 4th or worst, right? So there's a whole bunch of stuff here that basically is like, she has to be always in her the best position that she can get herself into, and she cannot be rushed. If she gets rushed at any point in the race, not gonna trigger. And the best way to avoid being rushed in a race is higher wit. So that's kind of hard to account for. This makes it a little bit inconsistent, because if you're in races, especially, and this also is another point, I don't know if any of you ever ran Gemini, but for those who ran Gemini, wit was not necessarily a skill on premium. You didn't really need a lot of wit in that race. The winning horse that ended up winning it for me, my gold ship, had like 310 wit. That's not that great, but wit was not necessary for a long distance track. A little bit more necessary for a medium track, and obviously wit in general is just good to have. But the longer the track goes, wit does not hold as much value as it would in a shorter or mile distance track where you need every skill to pop so that you can keep those good positions. It just doesn't hold as much as you need. So her being set up for these longer distance tracks and having a unique skill that is a little bit dependent on whether or not you're going to be rushed, which is also something that's just kind of a little bit RNG and random, is always hurtful. That is never a good thing to have. However, there's 2 triggers of it. So the first trigger, you get a lot more speed. The second trigger is you get a little less speed. And looking at these 2 triggers, this is like, if you're in your good position the whole race and don't get rushed, you get the better speed. If you aren't in the best position that you can be for most of the race and also don't get rushed, you get a little less speed. So there's 2 ways to trigger it that have 2 different effects. I do like dynamic uniques. I think it just makes things really interesting. But it also hurts the horse a lot, unfortunately. It does make it decently inconsistent. As for the innate skills, go with the flow. This is fine. To my knowledge, all lane abilities are going to get buffed later in the game. I don't know when, but right now, lane abilities, or things that increase lane speed or the ability to change your lane, is not super useful at the current state of the game of global. It is not as useful. So that kind of just is what it is, and you know, we've seen this before. Probably the best thing about it is its cost being 120. It's a cheap skill, and I think it does. I think it helps, but I just don't think it's as relevant as like medium corners or something that boosts acceleration or boosts speeds. It just doesn't really hold the same weight. Which, speaking of medium corners, great skill. This is a fantastic skill to innately have, especially because she is good at mediums. And then Late Surger Savvy, which, again, for people who don't know, it does boost field of view, although I don't think it's ever really been proven whether or not that helps, but from my own experience, I feel like it does, so I'll still be an advocate for the Savvy skills. I think they are good, as well as boosting your wit up by 40. Kind of good to come with innately. Awakening skills, Homestretch Haste, always a good one. Very generic. Can help you kind of maybe squeak in that win in the last spurt, or it can activate right as you're crossing the finish line. That it is what it is, but it is still a pretty decent skill. I'm gonna butcher this one too because I'm pretty sure this is Dutch. Lane. I'm not even gonna. I think it's like Lane Leher Dermain. I'm pretty sure I just butchered that. I'm so sorry, but this is the gold version of Go With The Flow. So it is better than Go With The Flow, but again, it's a lane skill, so not super relevant at the moment, but maybe it makes her a little bit better later in the game, but right now it kind of only hurts her. Focus, always good, prevents the late start. However, on a late surger or end closer, or basically the horses that run further back, late starting is not as detrimental. never good to happen, but it's not as detrimental as you would say a front runner would be. In Body and Mind, which is the gold version of Homestretch Haste, which is, I talked about this a little bit in another video. Homestretch Haste by itself is pretty decent. It gives you a good speed boost, and the price for it is a bit expensive. However, In Body and Mind doubles that price and only really gives you like 0.2 additional target speed, which when you're already at top speed and you're already at the end of the race, it could make a big difference, but more often than not, I think Homestretch Haste holds more value on its own than upping it to In Body and Mind, at least from my own experience. What do we see with these awakening skills? We don't see a single HP recovery skill. There is no stamina recovery skill to be seen. Why is that bad? Because she's built for mediums and longs. Or she is supposed to be good for mediums and longs. So she has no guts increase, no stamina increase, no stamina recovery. Which means you have to invest a lot into this horse to make her good at the things she is supposed to be good in. And also, if you want her to run miles, because she is built more for miles, you have to invest a lot of things to make her good at miles. Things are just not looking up for this horse. So, skill events, standard distances, that's pretty good. Fighter, this skill looks good, and maybe there are going to be people in the comments who can correct me, but Fighter can happen at any point in the race. As you can see here, you just need to be late, you just have to overtake, and it just has to be at least 5 seconds into the race. So it's never going to pop immediately, but it is 3-second duration for 0.2 acceleration, and it can happen anywhere. If it happens at the late race, that's great. If it happens when you're going up a hill so that you don't lose as much speed, that's great. Otherwise, it will just kind of pop randomly. That makes it super inconsistent, and the acceleration amount you get is not even really that good. The best thing about it is its cost. This is something you take if you've already taken everything else you already need, in my opinion. So, not really holding that much value. And then Tokyo Race Course is great. So, is Eishin Flash good? If you like her design, if you like her as a horse, you should roll for her. If she is an Oshi, roll for her. But for the people that are just wondering, is she good in general, like to use her and stuff? No. This horse is not good. Maybe she gets a little bit later. I know later down the line horses get a little bit more they get things that help them out. Like they rework some skills, they change some skills. Additional mechanics will come in. Like I know that everyone talks about the big change that will eventually come to Guts. So there are things later down the line that might make Eishin Flash good, but at the current state of the game, Eishin Flash is bad. I don't think she's very good. No, I don't try to say that for many horses either. I usually am like, this horse has a use case, or this horse is decent. I think Eishin Flash is unfortunately very mismatched in her design. Not visually. Her design visually is great, but her design mechanically makes no sense to me. I don't know what they were cooking with that one, but let's get to the support cards. So we got Tosin Jordan here. SR. Now, most people would be like, why aren't you talking about the SSR Nice Nature? Listen, it is good. We're going to get to the SSR Nice Nature. But the SR, I think we need to talk about this because I think people are going to sleep on this card. Is this card good? I don't think it's like great. I think it's a solid card. But what's more important about it is right here. An SR stamina card. We only have, in global, 2 of those. That is Mayano Top Gun and Manhattan Cafe. And both of those come with their pros and cons, but the best SR stamina card at the moment, in my opinion, is Manhattan Cafe. Hints that she gives are long shot, that's fine. If you're running a CM and you notice that in practices your horse is never really getting that first, second, or third favorite in the race, then maybe taking this might help you. Stamina to Spare is for pace chasers. It's not a bad one to get. Position Pilfered for late surgers. This is, you know, a pretty decent one. Take a look here. This is increased target speed. You just have to be running style late, random phase 1, and that means you have to be 5th or below for it to proc, which is great for late surgers because they're normally 5th or below. So pretty solid skill for the mid-race, help you jockey for position. Medium straightaways, medium corners, always, if you're running a medium track, amazing. And then we have pace chaser straightaways. So immediately this horse is built for either medium late surgers or medium pace chasers. A little bit more onto the pace chaser side just because it has a recovery skill and a boosting skill for pace, but late surgers can take this too if you're planning on running it. And then you can also get ramp up in Lucky 7. Ramp up is generally pretty good, will always pop in the mid race at some point. And it has a what's it called, a cooldown, which means it can happen again if the race is long enough. It's not that bad. And it's also good if you're like running like a tail held high strategy. This can be one of those skills that help you get towards your proccing tail held high. So this card is pretty solid, and we're going to take a look at this. And this is why I say solid, because you have things like Manhattan Cafe that has a 70% priority. That's pretty good. And Mayano Top Gun 55, so it's only 5 more. You're not really going to notice the difference between these two. But you can see up here, friendship bonus. Manhattan Cafes is much lower than Top Guns, but again, she's more of a random roll, whereas Cafe is more consistent. Jordan is in the middle, 30% here, 50 here, has the hint frequencies that Mayano doesn't, that she has. You know, race bonus is 5, mood effectiveness is very high. If you can get great and get a rainbow on her, this is going to be pretty good. Consistent stamina that Manhattan has, but Mayano doesn't. And that's where she's going to sit. She's in the middle ground between these two. So a very solid middle ground stamina card that is going to be really good to add to everyone's decks. And then we're going to get into Nice Nature. Now, I actually just want to quickly go over this because I think what really makes this card stand out is going to be the hints that it gives. Specifically one of its skills, which is a gold skill, and its thing. So as you can see here, whip bonus 1, race has good race bonus, has fan bonus, specialty priority is a little low. Wit recovery is 5, that's pretty good because I think wit recovery tends to be like 4 or 3, so 5 that's pretty decent. Training effectiveness 15, the you know, friendship bonus 25, that is what it is. The hint bonuses here. Obviously, she is set up like a Nice Nature. She is set up to give debuffs, so if you're looking to get some of those, pretty good. But what it really comes down to is right here. On your left. This is only available on 2 horses. One of them just kind of somewhat recently came out, and it's only on this card, which is not a good card. But this is one of like, this is a really, really good late surger acceleration skill. I remember I used it on my Grass Wonder for Taurus Cup. I didn't win Taurus Cup, but like on your left, like you would, when it popped, you would see its results. Its duration is very short, but its acceleration is very high. And it's very consistent where it's going to pop. So this is really, really good. And the fact that it's on this card only helps it out even more. So let's get into the compare tool, because I'm going to compare it to the only 2 cards that I think are relevant to it, which is the very generic Marvelous Sunday, which is it's a good card on its own, but it's much closer to Fine Motion. In fact, I would say that this Nice Nature card is basically a slightly worse, but I use that, you know, I say that caringly. It is slightly worse than Fine Motion, but with Fine Motion being a really good wit card, that means Nice Nature is also a really good wit card. It's just slightly not as good as Fine Motion. If you were to run Fine Motion Nice Nature, holy, that would skyrocket your wit. Like for the shorter distance tracks, if you could take it, it would be great. Obviously, you still need things like speed. So like if you don't have like a max limit break, like speed card, like maybe the You know, obviously Kitasan Black or something like that event special week speed card that came out when the game first started. You obviously want to have one of those max limit broken so that you can fit either nice or fine motion or nice nature in the deck. But yeah, this card is, I think that this is going to be pretty good, and it's going to be very good for late surgers. So I wouldn't sleep on this. This one is pretty good. Support banner, yeah, these cards, I wouldn't sleep on this. I think this banner is pretty good. Is this like an absolutely must pull? I don't think it's an absolutely must pull, but if you want to throw a 10 pull or a 20 pull in, see if you can get it, fish for it if you want, then I would say maybe go for it. I know the Kitasan Black rerun banner is going to be coming out at some point. So that, obviously, if you don't have Max Limit Break Kitasan Black, that is definitely a priority. But I do think that these cards are going to be pretty good. As for Eishin Flash, I do not think you should pull her. I do not think she is good. If you like Eishin Flash, then pull her. That's an Oshi pick. If you want to pull her because you just like her, then grab her. But if we're talking on a meta level and on a mechanical level, I don't think she's that great. Maybe she'll get better later down the line, but I really don't think she is worth the pull. But that is the end of this video. I appreciate anyone who's listened all the way to the end. You know, like, comment, subscribe. Always enjoy that. So yeah, thanks again for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. See you.